Hi, my name is Tasha Taylor. I'm a graduate of Lydia's house. I graduated in 2010. This is my husband, Johnny Taylor. He graduated from Dunklin in Okeechobee. We lived a life that was filled with chaos and drugs. And, it started back when I was 17. We had met and we started smoking marijuana and cocaine and we started doing cocaine, and one thing led to the next, and we were stealing from people, and we had no morals. We didn't care who we hurt. I didn't care if you were family. I didn't care if you were somebody I met on the streets. I continuously hurt people, not intentionally, but for my addiction. And as we went from one drug to the next, we got on painkillers, and I became completely addicted to them, to the point I was an intravenous drug user, and I couldn't control myself. And at the time, I didn't want to control myself. The only time I wanted something different is when I didn't have the drug that I continuously put in my system. And the only reason I wanted something different at that point is because I was in withdrawal, and I felt like I had to have something in my system. I robbed my parents, people that loved me the most. Everybody that got close to me, I destroyed them, and I made them feel bad, even though it was me. Even though it was my heart that was in the wrong, I made people feel miserable for not helping me, and I gave, lie after lie, and I was manipulative, and it was just a time that it was chaos. It was complete chaos, and I loved every minute of it back then. And I felt like that's what I wanted for myself until, the withdrawals, and I had no money, and I had went to jail the first time for drugs, and got on probation. And while I was on probation, I started doing drugs again, and I manipulated my probation officer, and I always found a way to weasel myself around people that were trying to be kind to me and that was trying to help me. I took their kindness and I turned it into something that would benefit me, and I kind of became good at it, and I ended up getting off of probation, being a full-fledged addict, and nobody even knew I was still on drugs until I got arrested again. And I remember sitting on the side of the road. And I was telling God, I said, God, I don't really know if you're up there, if you care, but if you'll just get me out of this one, I'll show you I can change. And I remember we had cocaine, I think we had meth in our car, we had needles. I think we were living out of our car at the time because I didn't really have a place to go, because at that point my family and everybody that was around us realized, what we were about. They didn't want us to be around. They didn't want us to be around their kids. They didn't want us to be around their families at all, because we were thieves, liars, manipulators. I would do anything to get my next high, whether it be cheat on my husband. It didn't matter. Whatever cost, whatever the cost, I would do it. I didn't care who I hurt. I didn't care about anybody. I cared about my drug. And sitting that day on the side of the road just telling God, if you just get me out of this, I promise I'll change, I promise. And I went to jail, and I was like, all right, well, I guess there's that. I tried. And I remember sitting in the holding cell, and I'm like, God, where are you? You said to call to you when I'm in our times of need. And I remember I was kind of blaming God at that time. And I went to talk to the people, and they were like, I don't know how to let you know this, but, you're going away. You just got off probation. You're going away for a long time. And I was like, whatever. I felt numb at that point. I was like, well, I have nowhere else to turn. I can't call anybody. And the guy that was there actually attends our church, and he told us, he said, I don't usually do this, but something's telling me to do something. And he walked out, and he came back about 20 minutes later after another cop had, basically talked to me. And like I said, I was just numb, and I was just like, it is what it is. And he said, I'm going to tell you, something's telling me to shred these papers, but you got to get help. And I can't tell you what to do, but I'll shred these papers if you could just give me your word. Give me your word. And that was nothing at that point. Like, to give my word was nothing to no one. So to be asked, just give me your word and I'll let you go. And I said, okay, all right. So I got out, and I remember I'm like, I'm going to go through these withdrawals. I'm going to be a better person. And I remember just feeling like, I don't want this life. I don't want this life. But I remember feeling sweaty and clammy, and my stomach was in knots, and I spent that whole day in jail, which could have been 10 times worse. But I spent, I'd already started to withdraw, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go through this, and I'm gonna, this is it. I'm gonna change. I gave him my word, and for whatever reason, that one time, my word actually mattered to me. And I was like, all right, I'm going to change. And I said, by that evening, I remember it was like by the next morning, it was like 2 a.m. I remember I called somebody and was like, I can't do it. And I went back to the drugs. And his grandma came and got me the next morning, was taking us to church. We went out to Dunklin because that's where she wanted him to go. And I said, I was like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be anywhere around God. I don't really care to know God at that point. And I told him I'm leaving, I'm walking. So I started walking down Martin County Grade. I told him I was going to New Horizons, and I'll do it myself. And New Horizons, I went in there and detoxed. And while I was in detox, my mom, she was calling, trying to figure out where I was, didn't know if I was dead or alive. And she's like, you just got to do this, but I wanted to be there with you. And she was my person that I could always count on no matter what. And she still is. But at that time, she was my codependent person. So I would manipulate her, and I would do whatever it took to get her to say yes. And she was my mom, so it was, easy, and that's sad that I played on that weakness. But it's true, I did. And so she started calling around because she's like, Tasha, do you want help? Do you really want help? And at the time I was like, yes, I do. But I only wanted help to the extent of me getting off drugs, because it wasn't my fault. Nothing was my fault. I was with Johnny. It was his fault. I was only 17 when I started drugs. Here I am. I'm 21. It's not my fault. I'm too young for it to be my fault. And my mom started calling everywhere, and every place that we couldn't afford, every place that we tried to get into. And I wanted, at that first day, I wanted help, but like I said, I was like, by the 6th day that I was there, I started feeling better, and I was like, I really want help. Like, I want to know, why do I choose to go and create chaos for myself? I want to know what is wrong with me. And I kind of was like, okay, it's not my fault, but maybe there's something here that I can look at. So I called my mom, and I remember telling her, Mom, I'm tired of being sick and tired. Like, I'm tired of fighting for every single thing that I have to work towards. And I'm tired of feeling like everything that's in my life might be because I'm choosing it. And at the time I was like, I'm not choosing bad stuff to happen. It was never my fault, like I said. But at that moment, I was just like, wow, I really want help. And like I said, she called around all these programs, and we couldn't afford them. And she called Lydia's house, and Miss Rachel answered and was, just talking to her, and said, okay, tell her to write me a 5-page essay, just basically of her life. And I wrote 17 pages. and only I think 14 of them sent through the fax machine. And she's like, okay, I get the point. And that next day I was getting out of the detox facility, and she said, I can't do anything till Monday, be here Monday morning. And I remember getting out that Saturday, and I'm thinking, well, it's Saturday night and it's only been 6 days. And if I had to be honest with you, I was like, I'm glad, I'm happy. I'm happy I'm off these drugs, but do I really need a whole year to fix my life? A whole year? So I started contemplating that next Sunday, just waking up and leaving without anybody knowing. And I'm like, and I remember feeling like, you know what, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I can't do this. Like, I need help. And if this is what it's gonna take, then I'll go. And I remember my mom was like, all right. And I remember going to sleep that night, and I'm like, well, maybe I will just get up and contemplate what I can do. But I was over myself. I remember just feeling broken, like I didn't know if I should trust strangers at the time. But my mom woke us up. We went to Chuck E. Cheese, and she's like, all right, you're gonna stay by me. And the whole day my mom sat by me, by both of us. And Monday morning she brought me to Lydia's house. And I remember sitting in the room with my family, and them just telling me, you can do this, and you can, it doesn't matter what you're going through, how you're feeling, you'll overcome this, you're an overcomer. And just listening to my family and these people that were strangers to me tell me that I could do something that I never thought was possible. Tell me that I could be a woman of God. And I remember Miss Rachel, she told me, Tasha, when you're done with this program, you'll be a woman of God. And it might not always go perfect, but you'll always know that you can come back to God. And that's been completely true. And while I was in the program, it was hard. Completely, it was so hard to look at myself and face me. And once I started doing that, I really got true changes in my life. And that's about